Hey everybody, welcome to another meeting of the Research Triangle PowerShell User Group. My name is Mike Kanakis. Today is August 18th, and tonight we are welcoming in a guest host in absence of Phil Bossman, who is on a previous engagement. So I'm welcoming in my son, Nico Kanakis. Hey Nico, how are you tonight?
Good. How are you, Mr. MVP?
Very funny. So Nico, could you tell us who our guest speaker is this evening?
Um, our guest speaker is Stevie Valdinger, and he's gonna be talking about automating your documents.
Pretty close. We're going to be talking about automating the creation of documentation for your scripts. So why don't we welcome in our guest speaker? Hey Stevie, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. That was the best intro ever.
Stevie's having a good time over here. So, ladies and gentlemen, tonight our guest speaker is Stephen Valdinger, who is a personal friend of myself and Nico. He's a very active community member, and he works for Chocolatey, and he's got some awesome topics that he likes to talk about tonight. You're going to be talking about how to create documentation, right?
Correct.
And
Yep.
and so like give people like a little bit of an intro. Like creating documentation sucks. So what makes this different tonight? What's the gist?
Creating documentation does suck, but you don't have to do it.
All
You
right.
can
So
just
you're
let them
saying,
do it for you.
all right. So you're saying we use command line, we use PowerShell to help us automate tasks. We're going to do the same thing and try to figure out how to do that with the documentation for the tasks that we normally run.
Exactly.
Cool. So for those people in our audience that may not know who you are, can you give us a little bit of your background, how you got started in the field, what you usually do on a day-to-day basis?
Sure. So day to day, I'm a solutions engineer at Chocolatey. So I help new customers and existing customers with whatever their problems are, complex, not complex. Maybe they have an idea, they need some help in implementing that. That's what I do. I help people automate the hard stuff so that they can go on and tackle other things that, we all have the problem. They sit on the back burner because we don't have time to get to them. So I help people automate the stuff that gets in their way so that they can get to the important stuff.
And I met you probably 3 or 4 years ago. And when I met you, you were an admin and you have a background in normal sysadmin work, client, server, desktop, Windows, Linux, printers, basic automation, right? So you got your fingers in everything, right? So
Yeah, I've been a run-in-the-mill sysadmin kind of guy for a while, but automation is where it's at. So that's what I'm doing now.
yeah, well, I don't know that I would call you a run-of-the-mill sysadmin. You have a different way of looking at things, which is what makes these talks interesting. Um, how's Chocolatey going for you? That good experience?
I love my job. I love Chocolatey. Chocolatey is awesome.
And you get to play with a lot of cool stuff, right?
I do. I do.
Yeah. So the cool thing about Stevie is he takes these things that he gets exposed to at work or through the community and he figures out ways to make them accessible for others. And I think that's probably a good lead in to your talk tonight. So maybe with that, we'll hand it over to you and you could do your thing. So ladies and gentlemen, thanks for joining us. We're going to hand it over to Stevie and I hope you all enjoy our talk this evening.
Sure. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I think, yeah, there we go. And I'm going to do two things. Clear this and make it a little bit bigger.
A lot bit bigger.
Yeah.
That's cool.
We're going to make that nice and big. And we're going to take a step all the way back to the beginning of your journey with PowerShell. When you're just getting started using a new module or a new tool and you want to learn how to use it. What's the best way to do that in PowerShell? The Get Help Commandlet. This thing is amazing. Right in your console, you have access to all the documentation for the particular command that you want to run. In the case of what I want to show off, I'm going to say Get Help Connect Nexus server. And it's going to load basic help information for me right here in my console, because I've defined that help inside of my function, right? There's this block of text at the top of the function. It's called comment-based help. You fill that out, and that's what the help system uses to give you all this cool information. And you can get really, really detailed. You can say get help -full, and it'll give you the full contents of everything in that comment-based help. So it gives you all your parameters, what their types are, if they accept pipeline input, whether they accept wildcards, some examples, some syntax. It gives you all this really cool stuff right here in your console. But it's in your console. It's in your way a little bit. That's what Get Help Online is for. So when you say Get Help connects to server -online and you hit enter, you get a web browser, and it takes you to the online version of the documentation where you can slide it over here out of your way. You can be in your console, you can be typing away, doing whatever you need to do, and you can reference the documentation over here. It allows you to work faster by having the documentation at your fingertips via a parameter. And I didn't write a single bit of this. Code did this for me, and that's what we're going to talk about tonight.
So Stevie, let me jump in there for a second, because you kind of hit a couple of things there fast, and I know you said you're starting from the beginning, but I think there's a few people in the audience that might not understand the concept of comment-based help in a function. Now, we don't have to go back. Okay, so if you have an opportunity, just mention somewhere along the way that there's a pre-built template in VS Code.
Yep, absolutely.
Okay, that's what I was going to cover, but if you got it, I'll shut up.
Yep, it's in there. So this is what we're going to look at tonight. We're going to look at how did I get from here to here. And there's a couple of PowerShell modules and utilities that you can use along the way that will enable you to not have to write a single bit of markdown or worry about how you use this thing and build this system. It's just all done for you. And I've got a GitHub repo called Beautiful Docs. And if we open up this web browser over here, I'm going to close this out and go here. So this is code spaces. If you go, actually, let me just go this way. If I go here, it's a new thing. I don't know if you know about this yet, but if you're inside of a repo and you just hit period on your keyboard, it opens it up in code spaces right in your browser. You get VS Code, so you don't have to worry about being somewhere else. It's super, super nice to be able to really quickly make a change and commit it right to your repo, right in the browser, and have the same experience you would do locally. Super, super nice. So what's in here? What is this module? And I'm going to switch to my develop branch because that's where all the good stuff is for this talk. So if we look at this, over here on the left-hand side, we've got a docs folder. There's an index.md in here. That's the home page for this particular module. So when you go to the doc site, this is what will be on that home page. In this make docs template folder is a YAML file that the utility make docs uses to configure and know where the documentation is and all that good stuff. This is a configuration file for that application. And make docs is a thing that is what's building that static website where all of that documentation lives and hosts all that on GitHub pages for you. So it's really, really nice, really, really easy to use. And we're going to walk through it step by step as we go through this talk. And if we look at my source directory, I've got a really, really, really simple PowerShell module that I've put together. I've got a PSD1 file, which is kind of boilerplate. It's really bare bones because my build pipeline takes care of putting it all together for me. But this is enough information for my pipeline to take it and update it and make it Correct. And then in my public folder is where all of the functions for this module live. So I just pulled a couple of functions that I have out on my gist site and moved them inside of here. So I've got a function called open git repo, has a parameter, process block, you know, typical function. What makes all the magic happen is this section right here. This is comment-based help inside of PowerShell. And if you've got a function written and you don't have this in it, you're not done yet. I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. You're not done until you have this. Because if you give something, a script, to an end user, and it doesn't have instructions with it on how to use it, they're not going to use it. That's just fact. That's how it is everywhere. If you go to GitHub and you go to a project and you look on there and there's no documentation, no examples on how to use the thing, what do? You leave that repository and go find another project that has better documentation so you can get started with it.
Or you go visit that repository in October and get yourself a free shirt.
There you go. There you go.
Hey, so a question for you.
Always a good pull request. Yeah.
Good. Got a question for you. So you're starting with a module, right? So a person that's getting started with comment-based help and they're adding it to their functions, right? So what happens if they haven't gotten to the module stage yet and they just have a loose array of functions? Can they follow what you're doing, or this is really based from a module?
What I'm doing is really based from a module, but it doesn't have to be. The tooling that I'm going to use will allow it to work with just, here's a file share full of stuff.
Okay.
And it'll work. That's fine.
And for the people that are watching that have a handful of functions and haven't created a module yet, a module is not that challenging to make, at least the basics of it. And what a module is going to allow you to do is to be able to make your code portable and make it easy to install with one simple commandlet instead of having to load all your functions in each time you want to run them. So Stevie's working from the premise of a module here, because that's, if you've gotten to the point of writing functions, you want to get to a module. But a module is not a requirement for this. But you really do want to get yourself to a module.
Right, exactly. Now I'm going to see if this works in CodeSpaces because I haven't tried it in CodeSpaces yet. So I just took out the comment-based help from inside of here. If you hit # in Visual Studio Code, it's not going to work. Hold on one second. Let me see if I can make it work locally. I'll do it inside of here. Got a bunch of stuff open, don't I? There we go. Let's blow this up real big. Close this. Get rid of this. Close this. You see, if I hit # inside of here, it automatically puts in this snippet for PowerShell based or for comment based help. And then the synopsis section is highlighted. So you can type inside of here whatever you want, and then you can hit tab. And I have codes, that new code lens thing turned on, so it does weird things. But you can type through every section and do what you need to do. And you can, tab down, shift tab to go back up, all that good stuff. But it makes it really easy to add that comment-based help. You don't have to worry about knowing what the syntax for synopsis, description, parameter, all that stuff really is. Just hit # and VS Code will put it in there for you. And then you can just tab through it and fill it out. And if you've got something with like 900 parameters, you'll have 900 parameters in your comment-based help. It'll grab every parameter so that you can document it. Super, super helpful. I like it a lot. I think that's probably one of my favorite features of VS Code is just some of the snippets that it has to make your life a little bit easier. And we're going to come back to some of this stuff later. I'll put this out of my way and go back to this. Let me put that comment-based help back in here. All right. Close this. And I've done that for all of these. All of these 3 functions in here have that comment-based help. So I've gone through, they all have help, they all have examples on how to use them, etc., etc. That one is kind of ugly. We're gonna fix that. And that's it. From a code standpoint, once I have that stuff done, I'm done writing my documentation. Now it's up to whatever build pipeline I'm going to use to finish doing the work for me. So let's step over to this one and have a quick look at what that looks like. So I've got this thing down here that we're just going to ignore. This actually isn't going to run at the minute. And actually, if I say, can I disable this somehow? Let me just remove it because we're not going to use it. Let's save this pipeline. So I've got the pipeline in 2 flavors. I've got the GUI version here that I've built so that I can walk through it and talk about it. And then I've also got it in pipeline form, which is available in that repo. So you can just copy this YAML and have a template that you can use in your own Azure DevOps instances. And I've also got one, there's a YAML file in that repo for GitHub Actions as well, if you want to use GitHub Actions. So to do some of the work of creating my module, I'm using Module Builder. I don't know if everybody knows who Jekyll is, at Jekyll on Twitter, or in the PowerShell Slack and Discord. Super smart guy. He wrote this thing, which makes it really easy to glue together a module with just a simver type notation. So it's really, really cool and makes it really quick and easy to build a module with it. So I'm installing the Module Builder module onto this hosted agent, and then I need a couple of additional things so that I can start building my documentation. And I'm going to leverage Chocolatey for that because I'd get in trouble if I didn't, right? So I need a couple of things. I need Git version, which is a really cool tool that inspects the history of a particular branch. So when your pipeline checks out your code, Git version analyzes all the commits and everything based off of that checkout and tries to be smart and analyze things and analyze what the semantic version of the module should be. Now, there are ways that you can control it through config and all that good stuff, and also through tagging things. So if you tag a particular branch at version 0.1.1, for example, and then push that tag onto the branch, Git version is going to assert the version for the tag. Now, that's getting kind of into the weeds and outside of the scope of the talk, but that's what Git version does. It just determines what the version of the module should be so that the rest of your build pipeline can reference that version, and you don't have to even worry about versioning your module anymore either. Let your build pipeline do that for you. So we get Git version, we get MakeDocs as well, which is the utility that we're going to use to generate the GitHub Pages site. And then I also install the Platypus or Platypus PowerShell module, which is a module that takes your comment-based help in your scripts and turns them into markdown documents. And those markdown documents are what MakeDocs takes and turns into static HTML and serves in GitHub Pages. So it's all really, really slick once you get it all glued together. And because the PowerShell gallery was down while I was building my talk, we happen to have the Platypus module up on the community repository. So bailed myself out of jam. Next step is just setting up Git version. This is just saying, hey, what version of Git version should I install? I want the latest 5.x branch. And then I determine the simver with the Git version YAML file that is stored inside of the repository. There's nothing interesting in it. We're not going to dive into that. Next step, let's build a module at whatever version Git version tells me it should be. So that's what this step does. That generates my module for me. After I do that and I have that module, I publish it to the pipeline artifacts feed so that I can go in and download it and inspect it later if I need to or want to. It's just nice to have that stuff laying around as part of your pipeline. And then this is where all the fun and the magic starts to happen. This is going to use my build script. In my build script, I call write MD docs that tells Platypus what to do. So this is where we really start to get into the weeds of what's going on here. Excuse me. So if we look at my build
Hey, Stevie,
script,
question about what version of Platypus are you using?
whatever the latest is.
Okay.
I can tell you Git module
14.2, 0.14.2 would be the latest stable release. 2.0 is a preview.
Let me see. I can actually tell you what version it used. If we go back to here.
Well, while
and
you're looking
pick
for that, I
up
think the scope of the question was, is what you're doing dependent on the latest greatest, or does it work with the older module? And I think you're going to say either or.
Yeah, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
And thank-
Chocolate Pack Rex.
And thank you, Sean, for providing the module information.
0.14.2.
Okay, so you're on the current release, not the new
Yes.
stuff.
So yeah, I'm on 0.14.2. Now, where was I at? So this build script is really simple. It's a build.ps1 with a bunch of switches, and depending on what switch you use is what code gets executed. It's a really, really rudimentary, stolen from Josh King way of doing stuff inside of a pipeline. So for my build step, when I want to build my module, I just say build.ps1-build, and this bit runs here. When I want to write my markdown documentation, when I want to use platyps or platypus, I call build.ps1 with write make down docs. And what happens there is I say, hey, if I have this and that's not on my module path, I'm going to import that module and I'm going to import platypus at the same time. And then this right here is the secret sauce to creating those markdown documents. So I say new markdown help from what module and the output folder. And I want all of my documentation to end up in here. So I say the root, which is the root of the repository, into the docs folder. So Platypus, when new markdown help runs, it's going to look at all the commands inside of this module and read their comment-based help and generate a markdown file for that comment-based help. And I think, let me see, does it have it? I can't make this very much bigger than what it is now, but let me see if I have it in here. I have an artifact run. It didn't save it, so no, I don't have the actual docs. They don't exist on the root of your repo, which is kind of the point. You don't really want your reference docs to live with your code. You want them to live separate, and that's what make docs actually does and how it works. And we'll talk about that once we get to that point. But you had a question earlier about, does Platypus work with just straight up PowerShell scripts or whatever those are? They absolutely can, or it absolutely can. Instead of module, you can pass -command. So you could absolutely say new markdown help -command and give it whatever you want. So in this example, you could say like open Git repo, for example, and say the output folder is the same thing, root, docs, whatever. Now that means that command has to be available in the running session when you run this command for it to work. So if you've got like a file share or something like that, say I've got get child item server share filter startup ps1 recurse. Let's recurse this share, find all the PowerShell scripts. Then let's say for each object, let's dot source all of those into the current running session. And then at the same time, let's do new markdown help command. I think we'll give me the PS1. I'm not going to worry about it. Whatever.
You want base name?
That's what it is. Thank you, base name. So as long as your power, now this even precludes that you're naming the name of the file is what the actual name of the command is, which is arguably the best practice because that tells you, hey, this PS1 script is this function is inside it. So that's always a great idea. So I'm basing the assumption that you're using best practice in terms of naming your stuff as well here. But what this would do is say, hey, go to this file share, find me all the PowerShell scripts, dot source them into the running session, and then run new markdown help against them. So that's how you could do it, not with a module. If you don't have a module, it's one way to do it. It's a little bit more work to figure it out when it's not a module, but it's absolutely doable. So that's Platypus and generating markdown help. Do I have? Can I just do this here? Oh yeah, it's not gonna work here, is it? That's fine. I can't even build it on this machine. I wanted to show Platypus working. Let's do this. Scratch cd scratch. We'll just use another module. We'll just use next to show to generate help. And then we'll say output folder here. That's what it's doing. So it's going through all of those functions and generating these markdown files.
Okay, so I'm going to blow up your demo here for a second. Because you're doing awesome, right? And I love what you're doing. But I have a feeling that there's more than a handful of people that are going to be watching this at home that aren't coming in through our PowerShell user group that are like, whoa, he hit a lot of stuff there that I'm not necessarily familiar with. So what you're showing here is how to fire off and build comment-based help, markdown files from the comment-based help using the Platypus module, using the new markdown commandlet, right? Okay, so that's the Platypus module. There was also another module, import module builder, which you talked about, which was from Joel Bennett, right? And we just kind of grazed on that. And then you also mentioned pipelines in Azure Devops. And for someone like when we started with the new, hey, this is comment-based help, and then we fire up a pipeline, there's going to be some people that are like, whoa. So maybe when you get to a point, I would love to see a way to build what you're going to show without a pipeline if they want to run it on their machine in manual scripts with the modules. So we could do that later. but just in case people don't understand how Azure DevOps works and a pipeline and calling scripts, right?
Yeah, sure. Gotta think, can I do that with what I have here?
And if not, we'll just theoretically talk it through, right?
Hey, Mike, can I interject?
Yeah.
In the chat, I put a link to an article in the PowerShell docs that walks you through the process of using PlatyPS to create the markdown and MAML help for a module.
I saw that, and I was going to mention it. For the people at home, they're not going to see the chat. But the reason I was asking Stevie for that was because the platypus stuff, I think, is straightforward for most people, right? What Stevie was just showing on the screen was a bunch of markdown files that were generated from scripts that are, hope everybody's familiar with Markdown. That's very plain text code that can be interpreted into a standard layout, right? So there you're going to have your Markdown files. What I'm saying is people probably didn't understand the GitHub, the Azure DevOps pipeline where you had like 4 scripts in a row. So all I'm saying, Stevie, is if you get a chance, let's just walk back and go through those kind of steps at some point when it makes sense for you. Because I could just imagine someone going, holy crap, what the hell is Azure DevOps?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Let me get through this next section and then we'll break it down a little bit. But just to show you, since we were just mentioning, hey, PlatyPS Platypus just went through and created all these markdown files. Here's one of the markdown files that it just created. So it takes all of that stuff in the comment-based help and literally turns it into markdown. I tend to like to clean this up a little bit, because if you open this in regular Visual Studio Code, once you have like a linter and all that stuff for Markdown, install a different one. The one I have actually complains because there's not like white space in between this stuff. And it bothers me that these are called out as YAML, so the syntax highlighting is different if you preview it, and these are not syntax highlighted in a certain way. So I tend to go in manually after the fact sometimes for smaller stuff and do this so it's syntax highlights for me. Now, do you care so much when you just want it automatically generated to be that pedantic about things? Probably not. Doesn't really matter. It still looks great on the website. But if you are a little bit OCD about things, that is something to be aware of with Platypus, that it does break some of the newer Markdown linting rules, if you can call them that. That the VS Code will yell at you for. All right, now the next bit, before we kind of dive in a little bit and break it way down. Let me go back to this pipeline. So we've used Platypus to generate the Markdown files. Now what we're going to do is use make docs to publish them to GitHub pages. And if we look up the documentation for
and make docs is an open source tool, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can go to make docs, their website. Their getting started guide is pretty awesome. Creating a project, all that good stuff. If you do this, make docs new my project, it just generates this YAML file and some other boilerplate stuff. So you don't really have to run that. Like, I didn't run that here in this instance. I just created a makedocs.yaml file and added what I needed into it. But if you are just getting started, just follow their get starting guide and say, hey, how do you install this thing? Let's create a new project. It'll walk you through all that thing, all that stuff. It's got a really cool thing in it called Make Docs Serve, which starts up a little mini web server and allows you to go to this website locally on your box to see what your docs are going to look like before you publish them anywhere, which is kind of really, really cool, actually. And then actually, I could show you. I could probably show you that bit. So if I go into here and I say make docs, build, and then make docs serve. There it is running locally on my machine. Now, obviously, the only thing I have in my documents folder right now is my index because I haven't generated with Platypus. There's nothing else in that docs folder, so I just get this. But that's really as simple as it is to get started with Make Docs. You say Make Docs, create whatever your project name is. Your YAML file is really, really bare bones. You don't have to do much with it. So if you look at the configuration for this, you have a docs directory, which is where are the markdown files that I'm going to serve up. You have a repo URL, which it uses later to publish things to the GitHub Pages site. And then there's a theme as well. And I really, really like the Read the Docs theme. I just think it looks really great for code. So that's what I'm using. But there's a ton of themes out there. If you want to use a different theme, just look for Make Docs themes and pick the one you want. And then just tell it which one you want to use.
So if I'm reading
and then
this
you just
correct,
give it a site name.
I was going to say, if I'm reading this correctly, you publish this on your machine and Make Docs is serving it up, but you could have it published up to GitHub, right? But then you could also go the old school way, which is you could end up with a file that you can import into whatever you're using to host a website internally.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, you absolutely could. You absolutely could. Yep,
So if you got a SharePoint site or you have IIS running or something like that, and you're not using any of the tools that Stevie's showing tonight, what you'll be left is some files that you can use to then import into your own website.
Yep. Somewhere in here, I don't know why. Oh, I know why. Let me go in here and do an ls. So if we cd site ls, here's all your stuff. Take all this stuff, put it on an IIS site, put it on an Apache site, put it in Nginx, put it in whatever you want. That's the static content right there. But where Make Docs gets really, really cool is, let me go find my build script. And you have to do a little bit of magic in a pipeline to make it all work. If you're just building it on your machine, it's all just going to work. But because a build pipeline doesn't know anything about your credentials for Git, you have to cheat a little bit for it to work. So ignoring all that for a second, Make Docs has a command inside of it called gh-deploy. And what that's going to do is create a GitHub Pages branch, push that site directory to that branch, and if GitHub Pages isn't turned on and wired up to work with that GitHub Pages branch, it does that work for you as well. So it wires everything up the first run and then starts serving that content to your GitHub Pages. And this is all you have to do. If you've already, you use Git in your terminal all the time anyways. You've got your PAT or your whatever authentication method you're using to push already to your repository. MakeDocs is just going to use that same stuff. It's just going to use your Git configuration that's on your machine to make this GitHub deploy thing work. Where it gets hairy is in a pipeline, because the pipeline doesn't know jack about any of that.
The output of your help files, you would recommend having in a separate repo from your source code.
It doesn't have to be in a separate repo. It just has to be, in this case, it's a separate branch. It's a GH pages branch. It can die in a fire. I don't care. I don't want it to be in the same repository as my functional code, the actual meat and potatoes, the stuff that does all the work. I don't want my reference docs to be in the same place. So same repo is fine. Different branches is ideal. That's what you want.
How do you maintain versioning between the docs and the different versions of code you might have?
That's all automatic. That's just going to happen for me as the latest version. Well, I can see your point. There would be a little bit more work to ensure that the versioning happens. So ideally, what you would do is, in your build step, when you're building the module and you're asserting this version, in your platypus step, in here, once we get to the right MakeDoc section, here, you would use that version inside of here. And then what that would translate to, if you look inside of here, I've got all of these different sections, and see how they collapse. So what that would do, it would put versions over here, and you could just use the drop down or use the expanders on those types of things. So you would have all of your different versions in folders underneath that. And you can control that type of stuff with templates too. There might be a better template that you can use to handle versioning, but you could absolutely handle it in your build pipeline by telling Platypus to, hey, put all of these particular markdown files in this version folder. And then for your MakeDoc stuff, instead of saying MakeDocs deploy, there's other parameters that you can pass here as well. I believe it's -D. I'd have to look. Let's see, MakeDocs GH -H. One of these tells me maybe it's not on there. Maybe I have to build it first before I. Yeah, I have a feeling that there's going to be a little bit of work prior to running GH deploy to be able to make the versioning work. But it's absolutely possible to maintain that if you want to. But as this stands now, what this is going to do is the latest version of the module has the latest version of the docs on the website, is how it's going to work right now. So a little bit more effort to do the versioning thing, but not outside the realm of possibility. And I'm trying to think, do I have anything else to talk about here? I think that's everything on that aspect. Go back to GitHub. Beautiful docs. Yeah, so if we look at settings on the repo, just so you can see it, if you go to settings of your repo and go to pages, now yours is probably going to say whatever your username is, .githubpages.io/beautiful-docs. But under my profile settings, I've set up a custom domain for all of my repositories. Go to my steviecoaster.dev domain. So if you go to steviecoaster.dev/beautiful-docs, you'll get the documentation for this module. If you go to steviecoaster.dev/NexusShell, I think it is. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's NexusShell. You'll get the documentation for that module, so on and so forth. Makes it nice and consistent for me to just have everything kind of on brand, I guess. So I have vanity URL set up for GitHub. And you can see it's tracking that GitHub pages branch. All right. And just to show it, here's the YAML version of that pipeline. So it's all the exact same stuff here in YAML format. But I prefer this way while I'm tweaking and building and testing things, because after the end of it, if you go up here to agent job 1 and you say view YAML, you can copy that to your clipboard. You can store that YAML in your repository, blow this GUI pipeline away, and then create a new pipeline with a YAML file and track everything over time from your repository. Get it working here, and that'll make tweaking your YAML easier later. And then you can control your pipeline and source control, which is the way to do it.
How do-
And
How do you hook up the Dash Online? How does it know where to go?
oh, you know what? I didn't do that for this stuff because I hadn't built it all yet. And then I forgot to do that last night. So let's go out here and go here. Open Git repo. So let's grab this open Git repo URL for a second. So there's a couple different ways you can do it. You can do it in the comment-based help with that link and just paste a link here. Or I think the better way, at least I think it's the better way, is to go to help in your commandlet binding and go help URI equals, put the link in there. And that's what wires it all up.
It's not a burn. That's just a indentation. Just where along
So,
the top.
That's how you do it.
Half the way you think tonight.
Any other questions around that? I can't see the chat while I'm screen sharing, so apologies if there's been questions I've missed.
Just curious, what's the thought behind putting it in as the help URI versus putting it in with the comment-based help?
For me, I've seen this way more, and to me it reads better that, hey, this is part of commandlet binding. This is part of the stuff that I'm getting for free. Like when you define commandlet binding, you get verbose and output variable, and all of that stuff comes along for the ride. I consider the dash online to just be part of that, and the help URI controls where that parameter goes.
Help URI is also how you would do it for a compiled commandlet in C#.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the C# way to do it is help URI, correct.
So Clem, what were you suggesting?
So there's a .link that's built into the commandlet or the command-based help, which is what he showed as the first example, and then he removed it. And I don't think you were watching when he added that in first, Mike.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah,
think
you can do it this
so.
way.
But I think the .link shows as a link when you pull up the help, not when you use the online switch. It doesn't work, right?
It does. Yeah,
It
.link
does.
will work online.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. Now there are
It treats the first link
related
as the
links.
help URI.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, because there's related links, and that's where all those links also work. But the first one will be the help URI, yes. And that also helps to, it's less confusing as well. If you have it down here in commandlet binding, this is always going to be the dash online link to the documentation. And then your links up here will just be links to maybe related modules. Maybe you have a get and a set and a new and a remove. So you've got 4 different functions, and the get has related links to the set, the new, and the remove. And then set has related links to the get, the new, and the remove, so on and so forth. So really, moral of the story here is you don't really have to have a pipeline to do all this work. If you just had a module with a PSD1 and a PSM1 and a simple build script, do I have a simple one laying around that I could use? I think I do. So let's look.
Well, while you're looking for that, let's talk that through, because that's what I was interested in before. So the basic pieces of what we've been talking about tonight is step 1 is you got to make some comment-based help. That's just a no-brainer. That's where we start. And then you're going to use Platypus to generate markdown files from the comment-based help. And then we're moving on to use other tools to publish those markdown files into the Make the Docs website. So we can skip the pipeline and we can go to individual scripts that will do those tasks, right? That's what it's saying here, right? So comment-based help, markdown files from the comment-based help, and then publishing those markdown files. And what we're talking about is tools to make the publishing easy.
Exactly. Yeah. So this is the perfect example here. So this module, for example, I've got a build script that does same basic stuff we've always seen. We've got an output folder. If we go into the output folder, to an ls, there's my module. We go in there. Here's my PSD1. Here's my PSM. So nothing too crazy there. So I can say import module output. Import that in, new markdown help module output folder docs. And I am going to say force because I'm sure there are markdown files in this one. There's all my documentation. Now I don't have at the minute a make docs thing for this particular one. So I'm going to say make docs create, oops, what's it? Make docs new, make docs new, there, perfect. So now if I look in here, there's my folder that I just created, cd ls, there's my YAML file, and then I can say code make docs dot YAML. Let me just steal this one. Thank you. We'll call this documentation. It's read the docs. This points at and the docs directory is one level up from the YAML, which I believe is correct. I don't want reason. Don't think we want to create music right now. Go away. Thank you. All right. Yeah, so it's up one level from that. So now I can do make docs code. Actually, I want to be in the folder with that. Make docs build, make docs serve. Go there, and there's all my documentation. Now I don't have an index.ht or index.md in that docs folder, so it's giving me a 404 because I can't find it. But it's given me all the other documentation. So yeah, absolutely. Outside of a pipeline, it's a couple of commands to get it all working. I can throw what I'll do for everybody here and everybody that's going to watch the video in the future. Check the repository. I'll put a PowerShell script inside of there that's a really simple, hey, here's step 1, here's step 2, here's step 3 kind of thing to walk you through doing it outside of a pipeline as well.
I mean, but that really is easy. I mean, it's all predicated on that comment-based help. And once that's done, the rest, almost everything from that is automation, right?
Yeah,
really...
exactly. Yeah, I mean, once you have that's why I did it this way. Like once your build pipeline is functional and it works and you've tested it, everything's just going to happen. You don't have to worry about the rest of it. Mm-hmm. You're going to do your comment-based help when you're changing your code anyways, because maybe you've added a parameter or you've changed a parameter name or you've done something else or you've changed some logic around that changes how the thing works. So you need a new example, something like that.
Or at least you should be, right? Let's guilt our audience into doing the right thing. When you make changes to your code, you should make changes to your documentation.
I'm going on the assumption that everybody here does the right thing.
We'll just move past that.
That's how it works. Yeah, and that's how it works. But that's all you have to think about. The only thing you should have to think about is your comment-based help inside of your script. And because your script isn't done until you have it, you should never run into the situation where you can't do something like this. This doesn't take a great gob of time to set up. Now, if you're brand new to pipelines and you've never done it before, it can seem a little daunting because there is a lot of stuff in here. But hopefully, through seeing me walk through it and talk about it and having the samples of the YAML in the repository will help as well. Because you can absolutely take that YAML and copy it and just change the names of things around and make it work for you. There's nothing in here that would really preclude you from just stealing it straight up and making it work. Now, there are there are some design decisions that I made in building the repository and the layout of the repository and things like that, that will kind of change things in here, because I'm referencing paths and things like that that might be different for you. So you might have to tweak some things. But by and large, if you take this YAML and plug it into an Azure DevOps pipeline and just go over it with a fine-tooth comb and change paths and things like that and hit run, you should have documentation for your module at the end of that run.
So shameless plug here, since a couple of the guys mentioned it in chat. If you're lost on the Azure DevOps pipeline part, join me for the next meeting. If you watch this on YouTube, watch the YouTube channel. The next video that will be released after this one will be a demo on getting started with Azure DevOps pipelines, and we'll be doing probably 90% of it will be GUI based, because it's honestly that's how I work most of the time when doing it for myself. So we'll be going over how to instantiate your first pipeline, how to pull in code from a repository, how to push that code either to an on-prem server or up into the cloud. And we'll go through those steps in a slow build-up fashion so that you can understand what Stevie's doing here, so you don't have to look at the console and say, oh my God, I have no idea what he did.
And to be fair, the same logic or the same sort of structure you can do with a Jenkins pipeline, a GitHub Actions. The same philosophy applies. It's just a matter of who you want to choose.
Yeah, yeah, and it can be a straight up PowerShell script too. I mean, I'll put one of those in the repo. So if you're watching the recording on YouTube, hi everybody, go to the repo. There will be a script in there that will mimic what the pipeline's doing. Just, hey, run this thing and you're done.
I mean, you could do it with scheduled tasks. You just need something to run your script.
Yep, absolutely. But it takes the guesswork out of it. That's what I love about this stuff. I don't have to think about the documentation anymore. It can just happen. It's beautiful. I just recently discovered MakeDocs, so I've been playing with it for a couple of weeks now. Is all I've been playing with it, but I need to go back through a couple of my old modules now and wire this stuff up for the rest of it, spend some time and tweak things and get things working the way I want. But yeah, I want to do this to all of my modules. Now that I've discovered this tool.
Speaking of old modules in this process, is there anything that would be useful in terms of highlighting? So let's say you've got 10 functions and 5 of them have great help sections, the other 5 don't. Is there anything here that would point that out, or do you need to fall back to like Script Analyzer?
Script Analyzer would be your best bet. Another way that you could do it, and I've done it for other projects in the past, pester tests before you get to the point of platypus or platypus. So you can write pester tests that validate that everything has comment-based help, and then run this stuff only if that step succeeded, or fail the overall pipeline if you don't have help. That's a great way to do it. So make your pipeline remind you that, hey, dummy, I got stuff to do. I haven't got all my help sorted out yet. So you can absolutely do that with pester. And I think GitHub.com. Where is it at? There it is. Source test help.test. This is one way to do it. Partially the way to do it. you can extend this and also inspect the AST and validate that like the synopsis is there, the description is there, the examples are there, et cetera, et cetera. So you could extend this out, but this is one way to validate that at least your online help is working. This would be more of a, this specific test would be more for running after the make docs step to validate that make docs did the right thing and that GitHub published the site appropriately.
But there's a little bit of an assumption going on here that I just want to address. So if you're going to write functions and you're going to publish a module, you really shouldn't have to need a pipeline to remind you to complete your help at the time that you're publishing stuff. You shouldn't be making a module without help, right? So
Agreed.
it's a valid point, and I understand what we're talking about, and there's nothing wrong with it. But we really need to drive home the fact that you're not ready to publish a module until you've created help files for the functions. Not create the functions, make a module, oh, let's go back and fill in the help that I'm missing. Because that's how you get into trouble. Now, I know the guys are blowing me up on chat already because like everybody does that. But these are the habits that we make that cause us grief in the future, right? So we have to stop and leave time to make help part of the process of building the module, not an afterthought afterwards.
And there are cases where you inherit code and you want to pull that into a module. So you just grab it all and pull it in and you don't think about it. You don't go back through and check the other guy's work and make sure it's there. You just, everybody's a hero. They're all doing the right thing. I'm just going to trust the process that he's done it.
It's a tough habit to break. I mean, I have it.
It is. And I'm
work.
guilty of it.
Me too. I have it at work. The guys that I work with are great at writing code, making functions, and then I ask where the help is, and they go, "Oh, I forgot about that." Right. So it's just got to become. And I go back to a little bit. I think maybe Jeff Hicks, who in another presentation was saying he usually starts his functions by writing his help because that defines that that sort of defines this idea of what he was looking for it to do.
Exactly.
Right. And then he writes the code to match the help because the help is really the scaffolding that told him this is what I expect my function to do. Right. Yeah. So it's a little bit of a different thought process, but it's the weakness we all have.
Mike, I think
sometimes I write my test first. So.
I think putting this into the pipeline is the trust but verify action of sitting down and saying, hey, I've got a module out there. I am taking people's pull requests, and you need to have help in it. And if there isn't help in it, then the build dies.
Listen, you guys are all 100% right. I'm not saying don't do this. I'm just saying as people who write code, and maybe you are the person who represents sort of like pushing new ideas forward at your company, we really should be putting forth the idea that the help comes with the code, not use the code and 3 weeks later I get around to writing the help file, right? So it just becomes, you just need to enforce that idea. I mean, I've heard Stephen Fox mention in a demo he did for Chattanooga 2 years ago. He started a new company that was very DevOps oriented, and they don't accept code pulls unless it has a pester test, right? That's not complete. So it's just a thought process that you put forward, right? If you're going to build functions, you build help to go with those functions.
If you don't have help in a function, or if you don't have help in a module, how do you expect people to figure out what exactly your function does?
Well, you kind of beat me to it, because what I was going to say is the reason you most likely built the function and the module is to make it portable. So either you can install it on different machines or you can give it to other people. So the help really should be part and parcel of that work. And I will get off my soapbox. I'm sorry.
Well, there's enough times that I've looked at modules, even out of Microsoft, where it's along the lines of, yep, they have help. They have the bare basic help that's pulled off of just the function being installed. And I have no idea what most of the parameters do. And I don't use it because of it. But again, I'll get off my soapbox also.
Yeah, there are plenty of examples of bad modules out there. or modules that nobody uses because nobody knows how.
I
Well,
can
exactly. It
resemble
might
that
be
remote.
it might be the best module out there, but if I can't understand how to use it, I'm not going to touch it.
Mm-hmm.
All right, Stevie, you've given us a lot of great stuff tonight. I'm not sure where you are with your stuff here. I want to get you back on track. We've sidetracked you.
I'm good. I'm good. I've shown you everything I wanted to show you. We've talked about everything I've wanted to talk about. I'm open for questions. We can go off on tangents. We can do whatever we want at this point. But I've shown you how to publish documentation without thinking about it. Mission accomplished.
All right. So with that, we're going to say, first of all, thank you to Stevie, because this was a lot of fun. I like this. I walk away from this feeling like I can go back to work tomorrow or next week, and I probably can publish some help pretty quickly, you know, maybe in under a half hour of just farting around with some different scripts and figuring out how to do it. So makes me feel like I can get something useful done quickly, and that's probably the big reason why people don't get the help done to start, because it feels like it's an arduous task. So dude, awesome job tonight as always. Thank you so much for presenting for us. I really love what you did tonight. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
All right, so with that, we're going to wrap this one up. If you're watching us on YouTube and you made it this far, thanks for sticking with us. We're gonna make some suggestions to you now on some other things that might be useful for you. So make sure you visit our channel and check out all of our content. We have about 100 videos of content just like Stevie's tonight. If you're not familiar with the group, you can join us live on any Wednesday. We meet the first and third Wednesday of the month. You can catch us on meetup.com or at rtpsug.com. Thanks for joining us, everybody. We'll see you soon.